Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 3. From the looks of it, day 2 was pretty good. I'm glad to see some folks are here. We appreciate you coming for the 9 o'clock session to get this kicked off. This has been obviously a great conference. Have really enjoyed just the amount of networking, the panels, the content. It's been a great conference, and it's been, I know, a real privilege and honor for the Commonwealth, the delegation here from Virginia, to host all of you. So we just want to again welcome you to Williamsburg and to this final day here at the SEDC Annual Meeting. I have the good fortune this morning to introduce 2 executives here within the Commonwealth that are leading world-class organizations. They're making generational impacts and literally moving the economy. Our first speaker today is going to be Jason Alkubi. Jason is President and CEO of the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. Before joining the VEDP in 2017, as he joined as Executive Vice President, we were fortunate enough to have Jason come from Louisiana. He brought a great group of folks, and we've had it's been a great opportunity with Jason's insight, experience, both at the regional level and also as Assistant Secretary there with Louisiana Economic Development. Followed by Jason, will be my boss, the Executive Director, CEO of the Virginia Port Authority, Mr. Stephen Edwards. Stephen joined the port in 2001. I think we all know what was going on in 2001 in our lives. Also in the supply chain, it was a very interesting time. Stephen has led the organization through times of challenges, but more importantly, through times of growth and continued growth and future investment. Before joining the VPA in 2001, Stephen served as President and CEO of TradePac Terminals, where he was responsible for overall performance of the company and focused on safety, service, and sustainability. And then prior to that, Jason has also served as President and CEO for Global Container Terminals, Ports America Group, and also P&O Ports North America. And so with that, I'm going to hand the podium over to Jason. Thank you.
Chris, is there a clicker?
Oh yeah, do you want to, you can do it from here or
yeah.
Wherever you want to do it. Right.
Great, thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. It is great to be with all of you. It's been great to spend the last couple of days with you guys, and this is my first time to be able to say hello in sort of an official manner. So let me, first of all, just for those of you who have come from out of state, let me welcome on behalf of the entire team at VEDP, the entire Virginia Economic Development community. Welcome to the Commonwealth of Virginia. We are thrilled to have you here. I want to thank the organizers of this conference, which has just been fabulous, really enjoying ourselves. I want to give you a little bit of a sense of what Virginia looks like from my perspective, and also talk a little bit about VEDP. I want to make sure you understand the state's economic development organization, how we work, what we do in terms of our different capabilities, what some of our big goals are, how that's going, and also how we plan to build on that foundation going forward in the future. Now, I know on behalf of all of our communities, on behalf of our states, we're very familiar with different rankings. We use rankings to tell our story. I want to share just a few data points with you guys, and I don't put these in front of you to sort of brag about the Commonwealth, but to rather just give you a sense of the sort of position from which we operate. And I'll just acknowledge among you friends and colleagues that rankings don't tell the whole story, but they do offer an important data points, and also certainly have great power in shaping the reputation of a location. So. And there's a great story to tell in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We are across a wide range of business climate factors, ways of measuring economic strength, economic vitality. Virginia regularly features among the very top of the list, one of America's top state business climates. You can see here in Site Selection magazine. Recently ranked number 2 by CNBC, and for those of you who track that ranking closely, you know to get to the top of that ranking, you've got to be either very good or pretty good at a whole range of different things, from workforce to talent to innovation to infrastructure to tax and regulatory policy to quality of life and many, many other factors. We have one of America's top states best higher education systems, certainly the top state on the East Coast, one of the top states in America. Some of the best public schools in America, including the best public schools in the South. The Virginia Talent Accelerator Program was recently recognized as the #1 customized training leader of its kind in the nation. We have one of America's strongest tech talent pipelines, which is something that virtually every industry sector needs to grow. And we have the largest concentration of tech talent on the East Coast. And as you're going to hear from my dear friend and colleague very shortly, we have one of the most advanced port complexes in the world. And this is just one of many ways that the strengths of the Port of Virginia have been recognized. And they're really building on this foundation in extraordinary ways. And you know, I know many of you have been to Virginia before. Many of you are from Virginia. You are experiencing a very special place here at Williamsburg. I hope you've had a chance to get around and walk and run or whatever it is you do. But you know, this is an incredibly charming place. And I will tell you, I now know virtually every corner, every nook and cranny of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And this is a state that is just full of really wonderful communities that have distinctive character, charm, and a very, very high quality of life. So I hope you get to explore the different parts of Virginia. I want to tell you guys a little bit about VDP. So the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, it sounds like a nonprofit. It is the Economic Development Authority of the Commonwealth of Virginia. We are fully a state government organization. We're organized a little bit differently than your typical state EDO. We are an authority, which means that the person in my position reports to a board of directors that is structured in a way to be nonpartisan. It's meant to be professional. It's meant to, most importantly, create sort of stability over time, so that as you know, a governor comes and goes, there's not a big change in the leadership of VDP. The governor has some appointments, the General Assembly has some appointments. Most of our board members are private sector leaders who, you know, sort of span the course of time, and it creates a very, again, nonpartisan environment, but also an environment where we can really focus on excellent operations and the mission. We do a number of different things at VDP, and some of these things are things that you'll see in virtually every state. We're responsible for marketing all of Virginia. Folks know us as the sort of business recruitment agency. Like most state EDOs, about 2/3 of the projects that we work on are expansions of existing Virginia firms. Doesn't always make the front page of the paper, but you know how important that work is. One of the things that distinguishes us, and one of the things that creates a very special partnership between VDP and the Port of Virginia, is that we have a very well-regarded and significant team that helps Virginia companies engage in international trade. It's probably the largest, and I would argue the most effective team of its kind at the state level in America. We've got about 30 people at VDP who do that work, helping approximately 500 Virginia companies engage in international trade every year, with roughly supporting about 10,000 trade-supported jobs across the Commonwealth. We've got a big role in coordinating the economic development ecosystem. One of the places where we've put a lot of emphasis, and this is not typical of every state EDO, is we've put a lot of emphasis into really understanding Virginia's competitiveness and how to improve upon that. Really deep investment within VDP into high quality research, including around policy and other competitiveness issues related to economic development. We administer most, not all, of the performance-based economic development incentives in Virginia. One of the biggest places where we have made recent investments is in strengthening the Commonwealth's position as a provider of talent. We have a long-standing program that provides basically a grant to new and expanding companies when they're looking to commit to job creation in Virginia, basically a grant to offset their recruitment and training costs. We have coupled that with the Virginia Talent Accelerator program that I was telling you guys about a second ago. That provides a full service customized recruitment and training solution. So we can either offer money to help defray the cost or a full service solution. One of the most exciting things we're doing right now is This is really cutting edge. We've launched something within VDP called the Virginia Office of Education Economics. And as important as it is to nail the workforce solution towards for any individual project, and everybody in this room understands why that's important. As important as that is, we also need to really do a great job of addressing the systemic issues, of really understanding the supply and the demand at a systemic level, not just in terms of programs, but really understanding the skills. The Virginia Office of Education Economics is doing absolutely groundbreaking work in understanding that relationship, and I am confident that their insights are going to unlock tremendous value that will enable Virginia to really capitalize on its position as America's top state for talent. Finally, Virginia is investing very significantly in real estate solutions. We've created a dedicated team for this. Virginia was a little bit later to this game than some of your states and has not taken a strong, at least financial role in site development until recently. We are catching up fast and recently announced a $90 million investment in sites across the Commonwealth, and we're going to accelerate that in the coming years. I will add that one of the, for those of you who are looking for sort of Virginia challenges, one challenge is that it's related to the beauty of this state. As you go further west, you will find that Virginia has a lot of curves, and those are very expensive when it comes to site development. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I will say that like a lot of state EDOs, we put a lot of investment into our partner relationships. We really want to make sure that we leverage the full team in economic development, that we're a good player. Certainly the Port of Virginia is part of that, and you're going to hear about that shortly. Stephen and I actually serve on each other's boards. But what I want to emphasize here is that I think in Virginia, we're really trying to live up to our name as VEDP and putting the P in partnership every single day. I do want to just say, I mean, all of us in this room probably have a set of target industry sectors that we're pursuing, that we market ourselves for. I will say one of the things that is a kind of a blessing in Virginia, but also a little bit of a challenge, is that you can do almost any kind of project in Virginia. Virginia is competitive, depending on where you are in the state, for a very, very wide range of industries. If you've got a Fortune 500 corporate headquarters, if you've got something in the logistics space, if you've got manufacturing, if you've got logistics, if you've got innovation, tech, Virginia has a very compelling case for virtually all of these sectors. And what that means is that we've got to be good at a lot of different things at the state level, in part just given this wide opportunity set, but also because there's also great variation across the Commonwealth in terms of what each region is sort of specializing in. And you'll see that here. So what you're looking at here, this is by region of Virginia. And you can see Virginia, we break up Virginia into quite a few regions. I've got a strong connection to Louisiana. I love my home state. In Louisiana, we basically, Don, keep me honest here, we basically talked about Louisiana in sort of 8 regional geographies. In Virginia, it's more like 18. Virginia and Louisiana have approximately the same landmass. Obviously, they're shaped very differently, but you're dealing with a lot of different regional geographies, regional identities in Virginia. And you can see here what this is showing is basically a list of the different Virginia regions down the left-hand side here. And what you're looking at is basically the breakdown of announced jobs by industry sector over the last 5 years or so. And that dark blue bar there is manufacturing. So you can see that for many of our regions, manufacturing is absolutely essential, but you can see a great deal of diversity across many of these regions as you look at the other things that they're attracting, including tech, corporate headquarters and services, supply chain and distribution, agribusiness, and other sectors. We've got five big goals at VDP. One of the things that we're charged with doing as the state's EDO is in partnership with local and regional EDOs and other state partners and other stakeholders, we're charged with developing a strategic plan for economic development of the Commonwealth. This serves as VDP's strategic plan, but it also serves as a strategic plan for economic development for Virginia as a whole. That process, which we've taken very seriously, has consistently embraced 5 big goals for Virginia's economic development. The first is to position Virginia as an economic growth leader. Virginia is a relatively strong growth state, but we're typically not in the top 10 in terms of percentage employment growth, and so there's an aspiration to move Virginia into a leadership position in terms of the total employment growth. But as we've talked about this, one of the biggest things we've heard from different parts of Virginia is that Virginia being a leader overall is not good enough. We want to make sure that each part of Virginia participates in that progress. Doesn't mean that every region of Virginia is going to grow at the same rate, doesn't mean that every region of Virginia is going to grow at the same way, but what it means is that we're going to endeavor to keep each region of the state in positive territory from a job growth perspective. What that means is that if each region is growing, the businesses in that area, the people, the families in that area will have benefits, will have access to the benefits of that growth within reasonable commuting distance. Thirdly, we want to firmly establish Virginia as America's top state for business. There's a lot of ways to measure this. Part of that is just being rigorous and constantly evaluating those national rankings, which reflect and inform our perception. We want to be at VDP, I say this somewhat humbly because there's a lot of talent around our country and certainly around the Southeast region. We want to be America's top state EDO, mostly so that we can be a great partner in achieving those first three goals. We want to be the most impactful and effective EDO, state EDO in America. And finally, we want to do that in a way that is super collaborative. This is a bit of an eye chart. I won't read that to you, but I'll just say that over the last 6 years where I've been engaged in leadership in the state's organization here, we have made a lot of progress. We've done a lot to strengthen our capabilities at VEDP. I've talked about some of those things already. We have also invested significantly in creating better collaboration, better communication among Virginia's economic development community. It is, it's something that you have to invest in every day. It doesn't come easy. You really have to invest in it, and that has generated better results. We've seen transformational wins from the Amazon HQ2 project to a huge Amazon Web Services announcement, the largest capital investment announcement in Virginia history, about $35 billion earlier this year. Lego, many other transformational wins. Great improvements in rankings, great improvements in reputation, great improvements in our capabilities. And these are just a few of the projects that have landed in Virginia over the last couple of years. Some of those I've mentioned already, but also a big expansion of Hilton's headquarters and investments in tech and in energy in the western part of the state. Great manufacturing strength across the interior of Virginia and some very special capabilities, including in logistics, that you're going to hear about from Stephen Edwards. That's just a sample. When you look at the totality of what's being announced in Virginia, this is what it looks like just over the last year and a half. So typically there's 100 or so announced wins per year. So a very significant amount of activity. We are always managing a ton of projects at VDP. Now, I will tell you, as excited as I am about where we are, I am even more excited about where we're going. One of the things that we have put a lot of energy into very recently is thinking critically about what it will take to translate this success in economic development, this success in the deal, into growth that will enable Virginia to lead the nation. In other words, making sure that we're not just great at winning the deal and putting the solution together for an individual transaction, but also making sure that we are rigorously evaluating Virginia's economic performance and considering what it will take to move Virginia into a leadership position in terms of percentage employment growth. And so a lot of my focus right now is on making sure that we're connecting those dots. I personally believe there's something that has been kind of a part that has not received enough energy, and that is when you think about what it's going to take to create leading economic growth or leading employment growth, whether you're the head of economic development for Virginia or whether you're somebody who's trying to position your community for growth, the way that I think about that is as we all think about, well, first of all, you have to think about your traded sectors, your economic drivers. But one of the things that we've done here in Virginia is we've taken that a step further, and we've basically said, what are the kind of core growth sectors? In other words, when you look at these economic drivers, there's a lot of different sectors, including the ones that were on that chart I shared with you earlier. There's a few in Virginia that are absolutely essential. For Virginia to be an economic growth leader, we have to win, we have to be an economic growth leader in 3 important sectors. One of those is knowledge work, where Virginia has traditional strengths. Think about headquarters and software and cyber, et cetera. There are certain segments of manufacturing, including food and beverage and advanced materials and biopharma, where we have to lead. And we need to lead in logistics. And what that means is that we not only have to nail our deal excellence. When we're managing economic development projects, we obviously have to bring our best to the table every single time. But what this means is that if we're going to be an economic growth leader, we also need to put much more energy into building ecosystems that are focused on these sectors that enable them to thrive. That's going to enable us to win more deals. It's also going to create, I think, a ton of organic employment growth, coming in onesies and twosies in these different sectors that may never show up as an economic development project. I believe if we do this, if we couple our traditional strength in deal excellence with a focus on ecosystem building that is robust and well coordinated, that will enable Virginia to position itself for leadership in these core growth sectors and will translate into employment growth leadership overall. That's really where we're going. There are 3 kind of core components to this. One is something that's primarily within VDP, and that is sector depth. One of the big things that I'm doing right now, that our team is doing at VDP, is building dedicated sector teams that are capable of carrying out this work for those core growth sectors that I just mentioned. So we are adding to our team right now. If you have folks that want a great opportunity, please send them my way. But secondly, we've got to put more energy into building these robust ecosystems. That needs to be as important a part of our work as managing the deal. And that's going to require some new skill sets for us, and it's going to require new skill sets for our partners. And the only way that we can do that is through great Commonwealth coordination. Most of what needs to be done to build these thriving ecosystems is stuff that resides outside of VDP. We need to bring the industry expertise, we need to bring the coordination. But it's mostly stuff that resides in other state agencies, or it resides in the communities around Virginia, at the local level, at the regional level. It's things like tax, it's things like infrastructure, it's things like the workforce and talent pipeline. These are the building blocks of thriving ecosystems, and essentially it's leveraging the insights of the businesses that are already invested in these sectors in Virginia, bringing those insights to the table to create this kind of flywheel that we need to get turning in these ecosystems. Other than that, we're really not working on a whole lot. I will just tell you one of the great privileges of doing this work in Virginia is not only being part of a great team at VDP, but being part of a great team of partners. Our team of partners at the Port of Virginia is second to none. We work with them closely every day. It's a big part of why I've got great optimism about what's coming in the logistics space. You're going to hear a pretty amazing story. I don't want to steal his thunder, but it's my pleasure to turn it over to Stephen Edwards.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody. Whilst we switch to slide decks, a quick question. Has anybody this week bought anything online and had it delivered to your door? Anybody? Okay, so everybody put your hands up. You are invested in transportation and logistics. Let's just start there. By definition, you're invested in transportation. The second question is, how many of you have actually pointed and clicked in the last hour and bought something online? There you go. Right, so
thank you for not asking that.
Exactly. But the message I think I want to deliver is the world of the last 2 years changed dramatically. 2021 and 2022 were incredibly different. And when we think about the South, and we think about all of us in the room and the regions we all represent, we have a huge opportunity from the last 2 years, and we have a huge opportunity going forward. And I'll come on to it in a little bit as I go through the presentation, and I'm going to go at a clip because there's quite a lot of slides. But the main message is the headlines of the last 2 years in my world, maritime transportation logistics, were 95 ships sitting off California. Those are the headlines. And there's many reasons why that was, and I'm going to try and take you through the pathway of how Virginia wasn't in those headlines, how we performed, but also what it means, what's going on in our world and what it means for the South as a whole. So, Port of Virginia, most modern gateway in America, and I'll cover off why we're the most modern as I go through it. Quickly, our vision, diverse talent, agile use of technology. We use a lot of technology at the Port of Virginia. Ever-changing industry, and it is an ever-changing industry because we did go through that. We think we're now into the world of how do we compare 2023 to 2019, because what happened in the middle was kind of an anomaly. But what a great anomaly in terms of if you're in our industry. Never more exciting than to actually be in a world where your industry takes off in that scenario. My agenda for the day, quickly look at our performance because it's relevant to how the industry performed, what's going on in the overall market, and what we do to accelerate our gateway, but is applicable to any gateway in the South. So quickly, our performance. Who are we? Who do I represent? What is the Port of Virginia? And why are we a little different? So we are the Port Authority. That's a political subdivision of Virginia. So think about the Port of Los Angeles, Port of Long Beach, Port of New York, New Jersey, Georgia Port, South Carolina Port Authority, New Orleans. That's the Port Authority. We have statutory responsibilities. But then it goes on a little different. We're the terminal operator. So we operate the port. We operate all of the assets. We own the assets and equipment. We integrate all the technologies. We also run the intermodal chassis pool for Virginia. When Los Angeles and Long Beach went wrong, go back to 2021, and the White House put a port envoy into play, a gentleman called John Picari, very experienced former Secretary of Transport from Maryland. John Picari was convening calls for Los Angeles, Long Beach with 64 executives to try and solve the problem. Which one of you is going to take the economic pain for and on behalf of the greater good of the other people in the room? Was essentially what the question was. For us, just one call, our Chief Operating Officer, which lever are you going to pull to make it better? Or not change, as the case may have been. So very different business models when you think through how we operate versus maybe how some of the others work. I won't dwell on this. These are our volumes of last year, 2022. We were up 5%. I'll cover back maybe more importantly in a moment what the overall port scenarios as a whole. But you can see about a third of our business is rail. The vast majority of this is truck units going through our system. Service metrics during the most stressful times. Our truck service was great. Our rail service was great. Our vessel service dropped a little bit. But overall, our service levels held up to the highest levels throughout 2022 and the highest levels throughout 2021. We did not suffer from what others may have suffered from. And we made more money. So our revenues went up, our expenses didn't go up at the same speed, and our operating income, of course, was much greater. And that should have been the case for every single business in transportation or international transportation in the last 2 years. So what's the good news for us as a port or for Virginia as a port? Yes, we made more money. We reinvest it 100% back into Virginia's infrastructure and back into Virginia's supply chain. We don't pay dividends. We don't push that money up to other shareholders. We reinvest it straight back in. At the same time, we get better ratings because our results are up, so we get a lower cost of debt. It didn't really matter a year ago when you talked about your rating had moved because interest rates were low. Now interest rates are high. It does matter, so it's a very important point. So what's happened in the last 2 years of growth? We are a business in ports where you're supposed to grow at 1 or 2 times GDP. And look what happened over 2 years. Houston was up 33%. We were up 32%. Georgia was up 26%. New York 25%, and so on and so forth as you go down the charts. But you think about an international business that says, trading business says we grew 33%, or 32% in our case. These are remarkable growth periods, and that's why some of the stresses came into the supply chains. Not least of all, because demand for warehousing capacity or logistics capacity went up by 33% beyond the ports. And that's where a lot of people hit some of their constraints. Thankfully not us, but a number of people did. If you think about the pandemic and our industry, transportation and logistics, we were the one thing that actually worked quite well during that period. We were frontline, we were all buying from home. If you think about it, we were all given some trillions of dollars to spend and we weren't allowed to travel. So we spent it and we imported all those goods, and transportation and warehousing took off as an industry as a whole. So we were a great stabilizing force through the pandemic as a whole. As some of the other sectors like leisure and hospitality really suffered, our industry was able to thrive. As a result, the economic impact for us as a port was tremendous as we look at 22 over 21. This is our fiscal year numbers 2022 over 2021. This is a William & Mary study. But you can see the impact as a whole. About 1 in 9 jobs in the Commonwealth of Virginia are touched by business going through the port. So that really just covers our performance. Now let's talk about what's going on in the market, what's actually happening. So first one, decarbonization. These are quotes. These are three of the largest beneficial cargo owners in North America and 3 of the largest shipping lines in the world. Pretty consistently saying net carbon zero by 2040 or thereabout. And we're taking exactly the same position on that, and I'm going to come back later to how we're doing it. But decarbonizing supply chains, international shipping, international transportation is critical and is on most people's agendas. Likewise, digitalization. How do you use data, and how do we use what's being thrown at us now with AI, etc., and how do we make digital technologies work better for the supply chain as a whole? So ships are getting bigger. Ultra-large container vessels, this chart just shows what's happening on ship size, the blue at the top being the largest. And what you can see is shipping lines have made a lot of money in the last couple of years, and their order book is exceptionally strong. I think this week we'll see one of the largest ships ever to call on the East Coast. I think it's already been through one port. It's coming to us on Thursday. So you're seeing much, much larger ships. So now we need much, much bigger infrastructure to handle them if we're going to win those economies of scales that those ships operate. So where's the opportunity for East Coast as a whole, or most importantly, the South? There has been a trend of market share movement from the West Coast to the East Coast that has been going on for years. It's been going on at a point at a time, half a point at a time, and it's really started all the way back in 2002, when you can point back to labor disputes on the West Coast in 2002, that have gradually moved on. So think about the biggest beneficial cargo owners and where they've placed their largest import distribution centers. So for us, our largest port user is in James City, just south of here. It's a company called Walmart. And they distribute from us internationally all of their goods to the Northeast. If we were in Savannah, you'd say the biggest port user of Savannah is a company called Walmart. And Walmart imports all their goods into Florida, going through the Savannah as a gateway. So those cargo interests obviously are saying, do we use California as our gateway, or do we come to southern states, and what is our requirement in each of those states? So this opportunity is getting greater because we're changing where we buy from. Everybody will probably have heard of China Plus One, Alt Asia, whatever those references are, but the answer is your apparel is more likely to be made in India or Cambodia or Vietnam than China going forward. Your running shoes are the same. So think where your goods are coming from. Furniture is beginning to move as well. So where the cost of labor is the issue, the movement is going to go into South Asia or Southeast Asia. The higher tech obviously is a slightly different area where there might be nearshoring or reshoring. But the opportunity for the East Coast is greatest when the goods come through the Suez Canal. That is the best artery to bring goods through to the East Coast. The largest ships can transit the Suez Canal. We can handle them on certain East Coast ports, and I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing about that. And that creates that big opportunity to take market share away from the West Coast. So for all of us in the South, that's a great opportunity. To handle it, what do we need? Import transload. We need developers. If we can't attract developers to our states, then we're not going to have the onward capacity beyond the port. And the same is true on the export side. If we can't create that export transload attraction, we can't service largely industrial or agricultural exports. So we need to protect capacity for exporters. Think that through. An import surge If you were a private sector operator in 2021, you would have filled your port up with all those imports that had arrived, and you'd have earned tons of money from storage, and you'd have sacrificed the exporter. The best example to look at that is Oakland, California, where we were railing almonds from Oakland to Norfolk to get them to India, because they couldn't get them out through the port of Oakland, because essentially that part of the trade was abandoned. So when we take a wider view of the economic benefits to our community, we're going to protect the cargo lanes that we need to protect. So what's going on, again, to summarize this section, decarbonization is happening, digitalization, larger ships, market share movement, west coast to east coast, shifting sourcing, not so much China growth now, but a lot more Southeast Asia and South Asia, and a need for transload. So what is we doing as the Port of Virginia? What are we doing to accelerate our gateway? So let's start. Our commitment is also net zero carbon emissions by 2040. And the graph here shows green is our use of power. So this says CO2 from electricity. And what you can see here is we will be zero carbon from electricity in 2024. Last year we were 67%, because we have a power purchase agreement where we will only buy solar, wind, or nuclear. We will not buy fossil fuel electricity, and that goes to 100% next year when another solar farm comes on. The blue is CO2 from diesel. So as we electrify all of our assets and we get away from diesel production, we can reduce that curve. And what you can see is a sharp reduction as we've electrified all of our yard equipment, and a shallow reduction as we try and get into the horizontal transports. How do you get rid of diesel in moving equipment on a horizontal basis? The dotted line is what we said we thought we were going to do, and you can see we're well ahead. We're also helping Dominion Energy build coastal Virginia offshore wind, which is the largest wind farm going off the coast of Virginia, a $200 million investment to completely reinforce one of our old facilities to support the offshore wind industry. The first components will start coming through this facility in Portsmouth, Virginia in October of this year. If you live in the Hampton Roads area where I live, the expectation is that people will stop to watch what is going to come through. These towers are going to be erected in Portsmouth. The monopiles weigh 1,500 tons apiece. So these are huge components that are going to start transiting through the ports, and they create their own ecosystem of jobs and job creation as a whole. Digitalization, we have our own digitalization as a port, but the only one I draw your attention to is a digital twin. Our capability to completely mirror our operations in a twin environment. So any upgrade we make, any change we make, we completely run it before it goes live. So if anybody ever sees an announcement coming up from a port that says you've deferred an upgrade, it's because you found something out in the digital twin. If you don't have the digital twin, it's trial by error. And that's not normally a good outcome. So larger ships. We're investing in our channels, $450 million, half from the federal government, half from the Commonwealth. And to show you the support from the Commonwealth, our federal funding was delayed by a year. It was delayed by a year because Galveston beat us to the punch on the prior administration in Washington. When our turn came to get our funding, we were already ahead of the game because the Commonwealth had essentially given us the bridge loan. We were already funding the full channel. When an ultra-large ship leaves the port of New York, it has to go all the way out before the next one can come in. It's like a one-way street, as it is in Virginia, as it is in Savannah, as it is in South Carolina. So essentially, if you take Savannah, you have to go all the way down the river before the next one can come all the way up the river. We are the same today. Later this year, going into next year, we'll have two-way transits, and then end of 24, a deeper harbor. So those ships coming through the Suez Canal can be fully laden, and we can take them in two-way movement. That two-way movement, of course, means our berths stay more occupied, our capacities go up. We're investing 1.4 million TEU to, 650 million to build 1.4 million TEU to container capacity at our last piece of terminal that needs to be reconfigured. So this capacity all comes on in 2025 and 2027. If you look at the background, you'll see all those stacking cranes. Those are fully automated stacking cranes, or semi-automated stacking cranes, as we call the operation. That will take us to something to the order of 156 automated stacking cranes within the Port of Virginia. To put that in perspective, New York has 20, Los Angeles has 28, and Long Beach has 75, and that's it in America. So we're double the size of the next port when it comes to automated stacking cranes. Our technologies are well ahead of the other ports. Larger cranes for larger ships. Those cranes need to be higher as a whole because the way capacities are built on ships is by going up in height. Not by going longer or going wider, but now it's by going up. So you have to get taller, higher cranes to service them. We're investing also in rail improvements which come on later this year. So in total, under my purview, there's about $1.4 billion of gateway investment program going on at the moment. It's critically important, but makes it the best harbor. We have by far the best natural harbor on the East Coast. Our neighbor is the US Navy. Is that good or bad, having the US Navy as your own? It's really good. Yeah, exactly. It's really good. And here's why it's really good. One, we'll never be shut. That's a good starting point. But the second one is, think about the village that runs the harbor. You need good Coast Guard people. Well, the Coast Guard send their best people because they're also servicing the Navy. You need good Customs and Border Protection. We get the best Customs and Border Protection because the other people in the harbor is the Navy. So actually the Navy has roll-on benefits for us as a whole, not least of which is veterans as a whole coming into our market, total about coming out of the service about 14,000 people a year that we can tap into transportation and logistics. And the fantastic thing for us is, if you have an 8 o'clock shift start, it starts at 8 o'clock. Think about that, a workforce who's actually believed that you should start on time. No? It's great. So, what are we doing? We're building out 2 great terminals. Norfolk International Terminal is the one I just talked about, 3.6 million TEU of capacity. Virginia International Gateway, 2.2 million TEU of capacity. So we'll be at about 5.8 million TEU of capacity come 2027. Last year we did 3.7 million, just to give you a context of the scale of what we're building. From a rail perspective, our largest market is the Midwest. Chicago, Columbus, they're some of our largest destinations. We do a lot into Louisville, Kansas City. We're now servicing Memphis. Memphis is an interesting market. It's served by every railroad, and some of the largest market share to Memphis actually comes through the west coast of Canada. It actually goes through Prince Rupert or Vancouver, which has just been on strike for 10 days. So, some of the importers obviously have been a little burnt on that, and that creates opportunities as you think about resourcing to India or resourcing to Vietnam, coming through the Suez Canal in this direction. Greensboro is a good market for us, a big market for us, because if you're from North Carolina, you know there's plenty of great developments going on the northern side of North Carolina as a whole. So if you're bringing your business to the East Coast, where do you place it? Do you place it in Savannah? Do you place it in Charleston? Do you place it in Virginia? What's our pitch versus the other pitch? So our pitch is, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to hit the whole market from one location on the East Coast? So a company, for example, such as Sanmar, which makes branded apparel. So if you buy sports shirts from a college or something, you're highly likely to be Sanmar, has based themselves in Ashland, Virginia, because they can serve the whole East Coast from that location. I mentioned earlier how Walmart takes the Northeast from us and goes south from Savannah. It depends what the requirement is of that client as a whole for how they run distribution. But our critical piece of distribution is we're a little further away from I-95, so we have to collaborate with the wider state to create an integrated freight strategy. So now, if we look at what we're trying to do with freight, in Virginia, we now say every municipality must build freight into their comprehensive plans. You can't avoid the topic. So that's a good thing to start with. You can't avoid the topic, but then look at the level of investments we've got going on. Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel is a $3.9 billion expansion of the largest artery coming up the peninsula to here in Williamsburg and on up to Richmond and the Northeast. So we now get this great advantage as we expand our port. At the same time, the major arteries servicing the port are also being expanded. And that's true of whether we're going west on 58 or north on 64. So what happens when we get it right? Developers get attracted. This is just a map of current developers that are announced and known within Virginia as a whole, or the Hampton Roads region of Virginia, the port area, port-centric area, what those developers are doing, what they're building at the moment. how many businesses we're touching in Virginia as a whole. And then if I look at what has building that ecosystem done for us, so as we've developed this ecosystem, a logistics ecosystem, there's no huge, massive single wins. We play Moneyball, singles, doubles, triples. So we get developers to come to us. This is the last 2 years, the developers who've announced or built within our region. They've attracted third-party logistics companies that are exceptionally important to us. Take, for example, a company such as Dart Logistics, a California-based company, but their underlying customer is Tractor Supply. That's who they're here for. NFI Cal Cartage, again, a Philadelphia-based, very important group, underlying customer, Target stores. So you're looking at 3PLs who you bring them to your market, they bring beneficial cargo owners to your market. And of course, then you get the beneficial cargo owners. So these are the new ones, the ones that are coming in, not the ones that are already here, announced in the last 2 years. And then, of course, plenty of room for the future as we move forward. So in summary, when we get it right, we can do superb performance. When the rest of the nation is struggling, we build out great performance. Fast-moving market, incredibly fast-moving market when you think we're largely infrastructure. And we believe that in Virginia, we really are working very, very hard to accelerate this to be the premier gateway, the most modern gateway in America. Thank you.
Thank you both, Stephen and Jason. Those were great presentations. We do have some time left for Q&A. I'll kick it off with a question, and hopefully other folks in the audience will. As we sit here, it's August 2023. We're now, I would say, past COVID. Could each of you just touch on things you reflect back over the past couple of years where you've seen positive areas of maybe collaboration, things that maybe seemed so difficult before COVID, where due to the having to deal with just the challenges of COVID, that groups came together and there were certain things of collaboration that we hadn't seen historically. Are there any examples maybe you could touch on around that? Either one of you?
I'll take one that I think we could probably all relate to, Chris. So this might just be stating the obvious, but you know, in our work, teamwork and collaboration is so important, and often it has to take place over you know, great geography. And the shift to, you know, just virtual meetings and virtual interactions that are just so much more, and the technology around that and the ease of doing that is just so much greater now than it was just a few years ago. I mean, I think as somebody who cares deeply about each part of the state, just being able to stay in closer touch with the technology to do that, and where it's like, hey, no big deal to just kind of set up a quick chat with somebody who's, you know, a few hundred miles away. I mean, that's really terrific. So that's, you know, an obvious one for me.
What I would say, I think our challenge going forward from when the pandemic arrived, everybody had our networks. So all of us used our networks to how do we run our businesses. And now, of course, those networks have to change because new people are being promoted, new people are coming into new roles. And how do you build that same level of trust with the people who were in your network because you've worked with them for 10 or 15 years? So that capability to get back out to the locations, get to know the other players is going to be critically important. So I think as a whole, the pandemic and the supply chain initially brought people together for all the right reasons of how do you keep business continuity going. Of course, now as we rotate people through roles, or we promote people, or people move on to their next careers, how do we make sure we keep all that going so that we can build that trust? And the trust doesn't just come from the position, because trust is earned. So I think that's going to be the next challenge for us, get back out to get to know people.
You know, as you guys think about other questions, I would add probably a more interesting observation to you guys, for you guys, is that we've seen a pretty profound shift in the pipeline of project activity that we're seeing. I suspect you're seeing similar things, you know, regardless of which state you're coming from, and that is a far smaller percentage of our pipeline is in sort of office-based work. And that's not because office-based work is not growing from a jobs perspective. You know, office-based work is going to continue to be one of the single largest drivers of employment growth in America. That's true of Virginia. I suspect it's true of every single state, but it's not getting packaged up as economic development projects in the way that it used to. And I think the reasons for that are probably somewhat obvious to us. We're going to have to compete for that growth differently. And so that's one of the big implications of this, and one of the things that we're still getting our arms around. I will tell you, it's one of the motivating factors for our sort of strategic intent that I shared with you guys at the end of my presentation.
Other questions?
Nope.
Well, again, I just want to give a round of applause to both Jason and Stephen for their presentations, and we have now about 5 minutes before our next session. So again, thank you to Jason and Stephen.